Okay, so there's a few people, but I'd like to introduce you to our studio. But who knows about Orange? Okay, thank you. So I'd like to start out the panel with a little bit of our studio reel. Can you guys get the sound? Thank you. Yeah, it says 20 years is actually, but it's been 21st years, so the logo's a little cool. But our studio started out, a lot of people started finding out what our studio is from the show Land Lustrous. Who knows Land Lustrous? Okay, quite a lot of people. And then we moved on to Godzilla, one of the Godzilla franchise, Godzilla Singular Point. This one's available on Netflix if you're ever interested. And we did a couple shorts, and then Dragon Stampede. And I'm missing Beastars on there, but yeah, Beastars as well. And I'm just curious, who knows Idolish Sudden? Okay, see a couple of people. I'm sure everyone's all passionate. You're worth 100 people in this room, probably. But we've been in the business for about 22 years now, and we've been doing a lot of subcontracting work for a lot of other studios, like for example, Color, Madhouse, Sunrise and stuff, for their CG work. And we're known before Land Lustrous as a mecha studio. We did a lot of mechas. We did Evangelion. We did Code Geass. One thing we didn't do is Gundam, but we did like Aquarion, those kind of mecha shows. But myself, sorry, I forgot my introduction. My name is Yoshihiro Watanabe. I'm a producer at Studio Orange. Woo! Thank you. But going to about a little bit myself, I actually started my career after graduating from college in California. I was born in Japan, but I grew up in the stateside in California, and I started volunteering for AnimeCon, like the MomoCon itself, called Anime Expo back over there. And from there, I started volunteering at other events like Otakon on Washington, and I found there I was recruited to an anime studio called Madhouse, and they're opening up a Madhouse USA, and this was a department basically handling anime adaptation for live action films. So, but you probably never heard of any of these live action films. Has anyone heard about Madhouse shows being adapted to live action? No. Yes, because it all failed. No, it was actually quite successful in its own ways, but unfortunately, getting Hollywood film adapted to was a really difficult task. So yeah, then I got transferred to the Madhouse Japan and started working as a production assistant there. And I've done a couple things, from just doing licensing deals to just handling our guests at cons or making international deals work. But I kind of got fed up with the anime industry and left for IT Venture. And that was one heck of a environment. Much worse than the anime industry, so I'm like, I'd rather do something I enjoy doing, so I came back to the anime industry. And from there, I moved to this new studio called PA Works, and I was a producer, thank you. As a producer there, excuse me, for a show called Eccentric Family. And then from there, I learned many things. So I ended up trying to find a place that I could feel much more comfortable. So I ended up in Orange. And so why is Orange so special to me, and what I think is really special about the studio is something I want to talk about today. Our studio is headed by an animator called Eiji Inamoto. And this guy is the guy who founded the studio just by himself back 22 years ago. And he had this great vision that to find this new art form in CG animation. And he himself is a very interesting guy. He actually is our CEO, but he is on the ground making the quality animation every single day. So even I'm speaking right now, even if it's a weekend, he's probably working just by himself in the studio. Because weekends, everyone else goes home. But how do we create animation? So how did he find the studio? So he was actually, he was trying to become a mangaka. And so he was actually working as an assistant to a really famous mangaka, which I'm not gonna mention because it's not related to the story. But one day, he had this encounter, and he met this thing called Woody. And that's my drawing, so sorry, it doesn't look like it. I just drew on my iPhone real quick and just posted it here. But he saw Toy Story and felt that there's this age of CG animation coming. So from there he actually did is he spent his life savings and bought this amazing PC at the time, which is probably less respect than your smartphone right now, to start CG animation. And this is him just not starting a company. This is pre-Orange. He's, as a single person, he started doing this. And in the history of Japanese CG is that, this isn't our history of Orange, but the history of Japanese CG is that there was a show called Golgo 13, and this was the first time ever to have in commercial CG used in Japan, and this was 1983. And then in the TV series, Initial D was the first one. You know, the car racing, yeah. Basically what introduced Eurobeat to the anime community was what got CG. And then there was a show called Zoids, which mech robots fight together. You know, like Horizon the game. Basically that, but all much more earlier time. And then he animated the Tachikoma. This is when Inamoto comes in. So in Zoids, he started doing more commercial animation. And in Ghost in the Shell, he single-handedly animated certain scenes. So let's look into what kind of graphically how CG world worked. So in Golgo 13, this is not the actual poster of that particular movie, but this was a CG back then. So it looks very CG. This is not how the whole show looks like. It's hand animated, so this doesn't really blend in. But at the time, this was the best in the Japanese industry that can be done. But from there, a couple of years passed, and Initial D happened, and this was the hand-drawn sequence where the characters are, and then it's like this, but this is CG. So you can still tell that there's a little bit of different texture, different tones to the hand-drawn side, but the animation was great. So why are these differences happening? Why can Hollywood create so much high-quality CG in the level of Toy Story at the time, and Japan can only do this? It's because the amount of experience, amount of tools available, amount of budget available has been different. But over the years, Japanese companies has been working on their CG technology as well. And this is when Inamoto started emerging. And one of the shows that he worked on early is called Gene Shaft. And this is a 12-episode series, 2001. And there's a lot of mech battles in every single episode. So there's about a couple minutes of mech battles in every episode. He single-handedly animated, modeled, and created all the CG, everything in this show. So this level of mech, it's a gigantic mech fighting another mech or warships. So Inomoto did all the CG for this. I don't have footages, unfortunately. But yeah, animating something this complicated single-handedly as a single person, even today, is pretty crazy. And then he did Ghost in the Shell. So Ghost in the Shell standalone complex was a TV series as well. I think it was a 26 episode, and there's a second season as well. But he didn't single-handedly do all the CGs, but there's certain shots that he's done with the mechs. But in the ending, there's a segment called Days of Tachikoma. So it's this mechs called Tachikoma, basically doing a little bit of gag or skit and stuff. And this sequence, he single-handedly animated everything. But at this point, Inomoto had this great vision that he felt that there's ways for creating Japanese-style animation with CG. But at this time, he was only able to do mechs. So he felt that there was a future where he could do characters, human characters, and create much more interesting type of vision. And that's how Orange was founded, with his vision and how he started performing this certain types of limited animation that Japan's really good at. And a lot of people started joining us. So the company started as him alone, but today we currently have 173 employees. Wow. So we've grown a lot. But this is what our studio looks like right now. It's a nice area. In front of this, there's a farm. It does not have any orange trees. It has a lot of pear trees for some reason, because we don't own any of that. But we have a nice park next to it. We now have 2 studios. This is the studio 1, and we have another studio. And this is what our studio looks like inside. It's a 4-story building with an underground attic. And this is studio 2. So yeah, this houses about 180 people now. So it's getting pretty big. But these are the things that we used to do as a subcontract work. So looking at these, you can see that we were called the experts of mechs. Even these girls are mechs too, so. Thank you. So, as you saw, there's a lot of intense dynamic action scenes, and you probably thought, why doesn't Orange have every single minute of the episodes filled with these? Why? It's because human acting is much more complex than action. It's not that action is easier to do, it's just that the amount of attention that's required to get rid of that uncanniness that the CG animation naturally holds in technical discrepancies, to really make that easy for you to watch without thinking about anything else but the story and the characters is something really difficult. So that's what our animators are really focusing on, to make sure that the characters are the ones that you guys are related to the most. But so doing CG anime or CG animation in anime, that's something I think maybe is that something special to you guys? Okay. Well, that itself is very special, but so Inomoto Berry wants to do something different, and that idea leads us to how our studio is. So, typical anime studio is what it is that they do project planning, so developing a project, pre-production, so designing characters, designing the story, animation process, art design, so designing design backgrounds and stuff, post-production, so recording and stuff. But if you think about anime studios, what other function do you think anime studios has? If you think of something other than this, anyone? Over there?
Like adapting manga to animation. That's like important from a cultural perspective for like people that have a different audience. Sorry, did you hear me?
Not half of it.
I'm sorry. Adapting manga into animation. 'Cause that's
Yeah,
like a big-
that'll be part of the pre-production. So selecting projects and stuff. Yourself, again? Huh? Editing, yes, editing, sorry. That's part of the post-production. But, okay, one more, you guys know?
Like marketing and reaching out to studios so that they can actually air what you're working on.
Yeah, marketing and stuff. That's a great point. The studio does not tend to do that in Japan. I'm going to talk more about that today. But marketing tends to be part of the business side of anime. So a lot of the animation studio in Japan, so when you say studio in America, you talk about Fox, you talk about Universal Pictures, they hold the business capability of a show and also the creative side of the show. While Japanese anime studios mostly, not including the big ones like, for example, Toei, who makes One Piece and stuff, the smaller studio only has a production capability. So what they do is just make the show, and they're hired to make the show. They might invest in it a little bit, or they might own the whole show, but mostly the business side, so distributing it. So let's talk about the business side. So licensing it, so licensing Crunchyroll to have it streamed, and then the stream, how the anime gets distributed, so how, if Crunchyroll's partner, how do you want Crunchyroll to distribute the show? Or making merchandise, so like the posters, plushies, making that, all this kind of stuff. Doing events like being at a con, doing the exhibit hall, what do you call it, booth, fan outreach like social media and stuff. Most studios don't really have this function. They might have it just to notify people, but they don't really focus on this as their main business because they don't get paid to do this. In Orange's case, with the Inomoto's idea, is that we felt that we had to be very responsible for our creativity. We are getting paid to show our creativity, but to the viewers, we are the ones who's deciding these creativities. So we want to make sure that we are responsible how we're presenting things to the fans. So today, tomorrow, I'm bringing myself is here and brought some my staff, our staff, Tomioka-san, designer from Trigun, who's going to be talking tomorrow. These kind of outreach is very important to be basically having communication here. So in CG production, unlike hand drawn, there's much more processes. It's more very technical, so you can't just have, I mean, it's not simple to make hand drawn, but CG animation, there's much more complexity in the developing side. So you can't just animate something because you have a character design. You have to model something and make sure that that's actually able to function. You have to move it. We'll talk more about this later. Oops. So what was our challenges really? If you have been to our panels in the past, you may have heard this, but in CG animation development, tool development, technological development is really important. That costs a lot of money. And in Japan, we don't have this like development budget that was given by our clients. We have to include it in the production budget of the show. So what we thought is that, well, if we develop, if we know what shows we're gonna make in the future, we could develop a technology or a tool for this show, show 1, then use that same technology and advance it in the show 2 following. So what we did is in the first show, Land Lustrous, we thought this was the best, great way to start for our studio to start out with, because it's a show about gems, as human-shaped gems. So they're not humans, so you don't have that uncanniness that we're trying to emulate humans. We're trying to create this special character called gems. So we start out from there. Then we went to Beastars, and Beastars is about humanoid animals. So it's still closer to human, but they have animal heads. So it's still not human. Why are we taking these steps? It's because we tried to do human. So actually, we tried to do Trigun Stampede when we were doing Land Lustrous. So Land Lustrous was 5 years before Trigun. And it was originally supposed to take only 3 years to make, but we couldn't. It was actually technologically too difficult for us. The talent was there, but the proper tools was not there to make it. So basically, we took the approach to try to create other shows while we're still developing for Trigun as well. So this is basically how we try to set our course to Trigun Stampede. And so for those who doesn't know what Land Lustrous, these are the gems. So a humanoid gem shape. This gem is phosphorite, based on actual real gems. And they have these humanoid gems have the feature of the gems that were based on. And within the show itself, we're developing how things will naturally look. So like, for example, giving a gem a hair that's much more thinner. We tried it out, but it didn't work. So we're trying to see what kind of natural feeling of the hair we can give to the gems. Oops. So this is a diamond. So this is later on in the trials, so they look much more natural. In the end, they don't actually look like this in the TV series because there's much more effects that's added to the screen. But these are the character designs we do at our studio. So because our CG animation, even though we say it's CG, we do try to focus on the how the Japanese animation looks. So the information of the lines are very important. So when we design characters, we design like typical hand-drawn animation because these lines really matters. So in the end, we try to use these character designs and then start making models. That was our main approach until recently. Now recently, we're actually trying to go from more illustration to CG models. So in Beastars, this is how we did from line drawing to CG models. So the colored ones are all CG models. And this is the framework, wireframe that you can see. And when it's rendered, it looks like this. So if you put them in turnaround, it looks like this. But to get here, there's a lot of goes back and forth, trial and errors, to see how much natural look we could give to these characters. Because the CG model itself actually doesn't look natural when you try to render in toon shaded render. And one of the ways that we try to avoid uncanniness is to actually, how do we use shadows? So when you think about CG animation, especially you play games, the shadows automatically gets rendered. So if the lighting, for example right now, I'm getting lighted from the back and my lighting highlight is on my front. So this is naturally done in a game engine or typical CG animation, it's done. But when we try to do it in toon shaded, the shadow comes out really uncanny. So what we decided to do is that for certain shadows, we draw onto the bodies. So the back shadow right here you see is a rendered engine shadow, but the shadows that you see on his body, like how you see his abs or neck muscles, these are all drawn shadows. No, there's nothing done down there, so just for jokes, I put that danger sign, but there's actually nothing under there. But yeah, all the shadows that you see, the big shadows are the rendered shadows, but the arm shadows are the drawn shadows. So these kind of trials, like for example, CG models, if there's too much polygons, it gets too heavy for our animators to animate. So this, to make a natural fur lurk, this is the ideal thought about it, but when you try to animate this, it takes hours to render this one frame of this. And 1 second has 24 frames, so imagine just rendering a minute of this. So what we came up is that we actually wanted to focus on the silhouette of the characters. So if we have this amount of fur, then it actually makes the arm from any angle looks like a furred arm. But in cases like these are actually generated furs, because what we did here, we wanted to make sure that she's really rubbing the tummy of Wolf really intently. So we want to make sure that fur animation is very, intense. So we actually use a simulated fur here instead of animators animating each fur. But as from Lustrous to Beastars to Trigun, we did a couple trials between there, and this is how we're approaching humans after Beastars. And then we come to Trigun, so these and this is the render. So these are the designs of Trigun, and we finally came to rendering, creating models like this. But to create that model, so it feels like the shadow is very natural, but what we did here is that our animator actually drew over all the shadow. So it's not a computer generated shadow. And not just humans, but creatures as well. We go like this. Some of the early, how we make a shot. So this is what we call a primary, and this is the first process of animating our show. So we use light model with less polygon to basically animate the sequence. And from there, we replace them with we call the high model, so much more a final look to character. And in Trigun, for example, episode 2, where Vash is jumping around, General Rock was first created like this. Well, the sound's there, but the animation's not working. And then, next sequence, he started including character low model. So it's still a low model. And then we created the high model version. So one of the crazy things about Trigun's challenge is that if you notice, a lot of our animation, only action sequences have 3D camera, so the camera dynamically moving around. But when you're having regular conversation, like me talking on stage right now, it's actually drawn with the character animating, but the camera's still, and my background would actually be just a drawn background. One of the challenges is that we wanted to create more realisticness in creating a 3D environment for every single shot, but that costs a lot of money. So one of the approach is to at least try one location. So in Trigun, we created this entire General Rock city in Unity, in 3D model. So tomorrow, and Tomioka's panel will show you a little bit of that. But from storyboard to finished animation, so storyboard, primary, secondary, and the final composite look this is how we approach things with animation at the point of 2023 when we tried in Stampede. But if you noticed, what you see on the storyboard sometimes might be different from what you eventually see. In this process, sometimes there's a discussion between director and animator, saying that animator doesn't like what the storyboard says, so I could make a much cooler move, so take it. In this case, where you see Wolfwood swinging around his Punisher, is exactly that. Back a little bit. So in this sequence, in the storyboard, Punisher is released, and then just a little bit more. Oops. Oh no, it's after this. Sorry. Here it is. So in this sequence, the storyboard is quite different from what the final look looks. Storyboard spins Punisher twice, and the animator is like, why is he spinning it twice? Is he that much of a show-off? And the director's like, no, that wasn't the intention. And they couldn't really explain why he's swinging it twice. So the animator, what she came up with was that, okay, where's so if you just show him twirling twice, it's kind of ridiculous. So she had the slow motion right there, how it opens. So it's showing different information, and it's not just him trying to appeal to the camera too much. So that's how the animators structured the scene to be very appealing. So also we pay a lot of attention to a lot of the faces, because faces is what people really relate to the most. From priority-wise, how people relates to is face, hands, and everything else. So face and hands is what we really see. When we're talking to people, we look at the people's faces, and when you're talking to people, you're looking at your hands. So these are the two biggest information that people feel uncanniness. So these are the 2 points that really try to make sure that people won't feel something odd from our shows, so they could focus on the storytelling. But to do facial, this is really difficult because it takes a lot of time for our animators, and not everyone is the top tier talented animator at our studio. Not that saying they're not skilled, just that that ranges of skill. So comparing a third-year animator to a 20-year veteran is ridiculous. So how do we fill that gap? Our answer is developing tools. So in BStars, what we did is that we started using facial capture. And if you hear facial capture, you might think that, oh, well, in like games, you can do facial capture and that'll make everything easy and it'll be finished. It's actually not. Because we animate things on what we call limited frame. So 1 second of Japanese animation is 24 frames. There can be total maximum of 24 animation drawings. But in our case, what we do is we do something on 2s or 3s, which means 2s means we use 12 frames for the full 24 frames, and 3s means we use 8 frames for the full 24. This is not, originally how this method developed in Japan was to do cost cutting. Well, Disney was animating everything on 24s. And Japan's like, well, if we draw half of that drawing, we could cut the cost to half. And this was the first idea. Now, how that still developed is that, well, if we do at this 12 frame, it actually creates this timing sense of animation that's really, the tempo is really, that feels good to the viewers. So we implemented that ideology and started doing limited frames animation for Orange. So each frame is calculated to create a sense of sensation to the audience. So in that case, we do facial capture and we do mouth flap facial capture. We found out the hard way that if we do that, facial capture is good for 24 frames, but if you're doing less frames, actually my mouth flap right now is moving, then you're missing mouth flaps between the frames that we took out. In that case, it creates uncanniness. So eventually what we came out is that we could use facial capture, but in the end, the animator has to redo everything by hand. And this is how our first facial capture was developed at BStars. Our top animator, Miyakoda-san, was being the facial capture artist for 40 different characters. What he did was that 8 hours every day, he was facial capturing for all these characters, every single day. And he had a facial muscle ache, which I never heard of before, but yeah, he said that if anything beyond 8 hours of facial capture, it's gonna make my face probably warp into something else. So this is the final picture, how the facial capture was used. Now, this is an example of how we add details. So this process, does not use any facial capture. The animator had animated all the expressions. But expression naturalness is not the only thing that matters. He wanted to make sure that the emotion's there. So he had a hand-drawn artist give him reference. So that what you see right there as a drawing is a reference of emotional magnitude that the director wants to see in this picture. Now, as a face, I think it looks natural right now. But the animator felt that he could do more to make this scene much more dramatic. So what he did was that, can you tell the difference between these two images? You can? There's actually the neck area, it's much more darkened. So the right side is the animator just doing regular render. He actually went in, then on the left side you see much more things, elements he added. So what he did, it was that he wanted to make sure the focus is on the face. Her emotion is the main focus of the shot. So he added a highlight, the shine in the eyes retinas, to make sure that people's eyes are drawn onto her eyes. And I mean, naturally humans are attracted to eyes as a symbol, but he wanted to make sure that's much more strengthened. And also he darkened the shadow under the neck to make sure that the face is the main focus. And this is the final scene. Even though the animator thought about all that, the director went in and compositing. He's like, I'm gonna add more flares, I'm gonna add more smoke. Because animator's job is to make that scene the greatest. Director's job is to make the entire film the great. So it's a balance, always the balance of those two. But our facial, so what's so difficult about our facial is that our models actually don't work. What it is that if you look at, so figurines of characters, there will be angles of, so if you look from down up of a character on the figure, it's not going to look like that character. There's some kind of discrepancies. So when that happens, what does the animator need to do? Is that make sure that the model works, is that they warp the model. But if they're doing that for every single shot, every single camera angle, it's gonna take a lifetime. So we developed a tool called Automorph, where if you point the camera to the character from whatever angle, it automatically morphs the model to make sure the model looks good on the character. So what it is you see right now is the right side is the camera view, and the left side is the model view. So the model warps as much as that to make it look natural on camera. Especially when like how anime characters look to the side. Typical anime, you see two eyes, even though in reality, there's no way you see two eyes because your face is sideways. But having two eyes makes it look more easy to sympathize. So those are the things that these kind of automorph works to sustain. So yeah, he looks like that, love simulation game, I forgot what the title, no, not that one, but it's the guys with the very sharp chins. But yeah, this takes actually months for us to master. Every single character has a different topology, so physical structure, how their physics work as well. So each new character is an entirely new learning experience for us. So how's our time? Oh, we're almost 15 minutes. Okay, I'm gonna skip the visual effects part. And we do a lot of try to adapt Hollywood production styles. So like having concept art in Hollywood production manners was one of our challenges in Trigun. Creating color scripts, so information color emotions before animating is something important. And trying to use like VR cameras. So in our show called Idol 7, it was a live concert movie. So the entire movie was about the entire movie was about whole live. So there's no story, there's no start and ending. It's the start of a live concert and end of a live concert. So what we did is we created an entire concert hall, and we motion captured all the dancers and then shot them in VR camera. So this is the director himself shooting 7 idols right in front of him right now. And this is basically the result of that. So what they did is they took 25 cameras, no, that's 25, yeah, 25 cameras to shoot all these idols for just one song. And they only ended up using one shot in the end because that one shot really matters. But to get that one shot, they really wanted to see which angle the idol looks appealing at the most. And also the crowd. What's a concert without a crowd? If the crowd looks automated, just syncing all together all at the same time, that's not reality. So what we did is a crowd simulation. So in a regular concert, you have so many different people. You have people that will respond very synced to the rest of the crowd. There's other few individuals who will be just taking their own time. So like for example, in the front, you see that person who just doesn't notice that the idol appeared in the back of the stage and just delays a little bit. So these kind of reality points, even though these aren't the main characters, it's really important to create a sense of reality in animation. And like, yeah, so we talked about production. So one other thing that recent development was art department. As we said, we used to draw with single pictures for backgrounds. And we felt that this creates a good feeling as a completed film, but we felt that because we're 3D animation, there's much more potential we could do if the backgrounds were 3D. So 2 years ago, we developed the in-house background team. So we could show some of the examples so this is a typical hand-drawn animation. background from traditional ways. I mean, nowadays things are becoming digital, but the methods are still the same, but how, if it's paper or digital is the main difference. And so what we did is that in our new background team, this is a 3D background. But right now, it just looks like a 3D object. So to add more feeling of that there's actually people, characters living and breathing here, this world exists feeling, there's many methods to go around. So what we use, these are the various tools we use. These are actually the different layers that you see on the screen. So material ID is basically what looks like the materials. Z-depth is what makes it look the sense of depth to the film, and then add color. And ambient occlusion is to add more clear silhouettes to objects. And this is the final background. And this is from our new show, Leviathan, which is going to be released soon from Netflix. Netflix still hasn't announced the release date, but it'll be coming soon. But this is the backgrounds you can see in Leviathan. So it takes across from Scotland to, not Scotland, UK to America. So there's, it's going to be taking place in various locations around the world. But this is the quality of the backgrounds we were able to achieve in this new show. So this is Turkey. That's New York. But it's a fictional World War I fantasy, alternate universe fantasy, where one side is a creature civilization where they have, instead of tanks, they have giant bears, or they have, instead of blimps, they have floating jellyfish and stuff. And on the one side, it's a mech civilization, so instead of tanks, they have two-legged biped war mechs and stuff. And the main character flies on a flying whale. Oh, it's okay. So we have time to cover? Okay, a little bit. So other than the production, about that business side, how do we approach the business side? Well, because we're not a business, anime business company, we're an anime production company. We still are anime making the show itself is still our primary focus. But we feel that working with business, much more intense relationship, creates a more unique experience for the fans. So from our studio, there's many information that only us knows, while the business side might be aware of, but they might not understand why it's so. So like in Trigun, what we did is that we tried to work with the business side. We'll talk more about the design elements of Trigun tomorrow, but how to create that sense of design that fits with the character to the these key visuals. And then the lore of the world. We have so much lore. We have 150 years of lore that we developed on Trigun, but that matters as a foundation for the story on the screen, the show, but that's not going to fully surface up. But so we felt that we could show more of the lore on our studio side too, and also doing like fan events. So we did Wolfwood Drawing Fest on Twitter, and which originally was supposed to be our own artists drawing fan arts of our shows, and I guess fans around social media started drawing more Wolfwood, so that was a big surprise for us. So those are the things that we try to focus on, like also coming to events and meeting the actual fans, hearing what you actually feel about our shows, what you expect, from us, or what can we expect to do, build a new community or build new shows from here on is one of the things that we try to focus on as our studio. And from here on, our future coming shows, Leviathan, and there's a trailer for it. And the show itself is based on an American novel by Scott Westfeld, and we adapted it into Japanese anime with a French director, Christopher. And the whole production took place in Japan, in our studio. But these are some of the characters I didn't get to see. And will be released soon. There'll be an announcement from Netflix with a new trailer. So please look forward to it. But it has some cool mechs and it has some cool animation, very dramatic. I'm one of the producers on this show, and it means a lot to me to how we're able to present this story to the world right now. So. And also Beastars, we are in production of Beastars Part 2, final season Part 2, and that will be updated from the producers of Beastars from Toho as well soon. So please look forward to that. And then we have Trigun Stargaze still coming in production. So we are in production. One of the things that business side, so Trigun Stargaze or Trigun Stampede, this new Trigun series that we felt that we were able to contribute to, in addition to the show itself, was that we thought that Trigun, Naito Sensei, the original founder of Trigun, also said, is that Trigun has this really strong, what do you call it, this pillar. And that pillar is very, very big and strong. And from this, we thought that, this Trigun Stampede story is also very strong. And the character has so much potential. We felt that we should expand more on that. And I didn't have that design here. Oops. So what we did is that we created Japanese Wafuku style Trigun characters for our New Year's card, because we felt that there's much more fashion that we could implement to Trigun. And I guess that moved the business side of Trigun, so you'll get to see more merchandise with various Bash, Wolfwood, and Knives and other characters in different various more fashion styles. So that's something you can look forward to. And thank you very much for today's panel. We do have 5 more minutes, so I guess we could take a couple of questions. I know the mic stands over there, so if there's any people, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 people or so, we can't take too much, but yes, please go ahead.
All right, I wanted to ask,
It's okay.
I wanted to ask you, so in the West, we had what I would call a new animation renaissance with Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Did the same thing happen when the Japanese audience also saw that film, or the animation industry also saw that film? Did that light a fire to maybe rethink 3D animation in Japanese in Japan?
So there's many elements from that film. So producing side, there's many clients after that film came say that we want to see something like Spider-Verse. But at the same time, how Spider-Verse is created, how, for example, also Arcane is created, it's such a different approach. Also technologically, they use much more advanced technologies, and the budget is digit difference. So it sparked many inspirations for us. So we tried to take different approaches to not replicate it, but take many inspirations to create something different. Is what is currently driving our animators.
Thank you. For Trigun Stampede in particular, there was an original show back in the 90s. How was it to get the license to work on the creation of create Trigun Stampede, bringing it back?
So the original, how this project started was a producer from Toho. He was the producer on Illustrious, and he was working with Orange at the time, and they were looking for a next show, what they could work with. And the producer from Toho said that, I love Trigun. Do you want to try adapting Trigun to anime again? And that's what my partner Waki, the main producer on Trigun Stampede, said yes. And what the project pitch originally contained was the final image from the Trigun manga, but reimagined, redrawn as an anime style. It's one-winged knives holding bash. This was the image, in the pitch, they were saying that this is the image we want to reach in the end of this new series. And as they were approaching developing this new series, it came out that, well, to retell the story you're never going to recreate what Naito created. Because Naito, what he created with the manga, is what Trigun is. So how can we retell the story is an approach that we can take. So what we did is that they took apart what Trigun is and looked at each element. So sci-fi, Western. Well, original anime, not original anime, so 97 anime was that it's still in the line manga, so sci-fi Western. So no, Western sci-fi. So the sci-fi element was smaller, so what we thought in this development, well, why don't we make the sci-fi element slightly bigger? Then that changed the whole how this storytelling happens. So that's a different approach that happened while we were developing the show.
Thank you.
So Leviathan is an incredibly cool project. I was so excited to hear you say that that's
Thank
what
you.
Studio Orange's next project is going to be. I'm very excited. I know how difficult it is to adapt novels into any form of video media because a novel is often much longer. With Leviathan, are you going to be adapting the novel as a season is a book, or are you going to be shortening it up so a season's, multiple seasons will make up one of the books? How exactly is Studio Orange going to be doing that?
So how this project started out was there's a producing studio, a company called Cubic Pictures, and they're the guys who are behind the Star Wars Vision project, those animated Star Wars short episodes. And Justin, the head of Cubic, brought this show to us. And this was when we were just about to finish season 2 of Beastars, and we're looking for a new show. And we read the original book, and we thought it was fantastic. But at that point, the director, Christoph, and Justin has been going for 2 years, 3 years, trying to understand how to adapt this really epic of a story into an animated series. So that was the starting point. So we felt that this was a very strong adaptation of the story, but it does adapt to all 3 books.
So, like one season, all 3 books?
I can't say anything beyond that.
Fair enough.
But thank you.
I just have like a simple question. Do you think that in the future there will be a Land of the Lustrous season 2?
Mhm.
And if there is, do you think it will be done by Orange Studio?
So, because we're not the business side contributors to Land Lustrous, we don't have a say in how the business decision is made. But as a studio, the people who make the animators and maulers and all our creatives who worked on animated shows, a lot of them still is with us. So all the experience they achieved from Land Lustrous is still being passed on to our later shows. And to them, it's something they spent 3 years of their life, so it's something very, very precious to them. I joined actually 5 years ago, so it was after Land Lustrous, so I'm just speaking on their behalf. But for them, they would love to keep on working, finish a story they told before. But it's not our decision right now yet. So once that opportunity comes, then we will decide. Okay, so thank you everyone, a little bit over time. Thank you everyone for coming today. And tomorrow we do have from 11:30 in the morning with panel with Tomioka-san, who's sitting over here. He is the graphic designer of Trigun Stampede. Now, if you think about graphic design, he just made some graphic elements. That's actually much more beyond that when it comes to Tomioka's relationship with Trigun Stampede. And that's something, this is a very unique thing that I saw for a production too. So I want to share that, how we approached the graphic elements of Trigun Stampede and why that really matters to the character and the world as well. So if you guys could join us tomorrow, that'd be great. Thank you very much tonight.